Thank you, Michaela. Hey, everyone. How's everyone doing? Good. As Michaela said, I'm Kiran. I'm a co-founder actually, of a Sydney-based startup called Competeshark. We've been around for about a year and a half, and my co-founder Sean's also in the audience here. So today, before I start, this is actually the second time we've spoken at a CRO Pro event, so I just want to thank Michaela for inviting us back. We must have done something right the first time. So today I'm going to be focusing on, before I start, just a little bit about what Competeshark does. So we're a digital experience and marketing intelligence marketing platform. So essentially what we do is we help you understand who you may be losing your customers to and why. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that later. But essentially we do a bunch of things around our platform, around competitor monitoring. We provide insights for brand marketers and agencies, and also industry benchmarking for CMO levels around like technology trends, optimization trends, and a whole bunch of other things. So I'm here to talk about three things. One is the evolution of the experience economy and what that means. Two, the shift to subscription models. And three, we'll tear down and see some of the pricing experiments we're seeing specifically around subscription models. So just to understand the evolution of the experience economy, we just need to go back a little bit in time. So if you go back to the turn of the 20th century, early 1900s, essentially we had this thing called the product economy, which was literally, Ford producing cars was literally, there was no other options for consumers. The alternative was walking or, taking a horse. So, this was a product economy. So basically, people were just happy to have a car. From there, we went into what's known as the feature economy. So this was where, manufacturers started presenting a lot of options, a blue car with a better steering wheel and better wheels. So, companies were selling based on features. So it moved into providing consumers more choice. That, as the economy evolved, that quickly moved into the brand economy. So this was all about, what does the car do for me, and what does it say about what I drive? So we were starting to move into, the status, providing self-expression and status. So you could have had a product with a ton of features, but you could actually be beaten by someone who really understood you at an emotional sense and understand your status. And fast forward, today, what we have today is what I term as the experience economy. Well, I didn't term this, but it was actually termed by these two authors called Pine and Gilmore. So what experience economy is really about is, it's about a value system. So today, someone may buy a Tesla as a way to say that, hey, I'm environmentally friendly. But at the same time, what Tesla's done has completely redefined and shifted the car industry forward, many years by creating a superior driving experience. So people either buy this for the driving experience or because it's in something about their value system. So we've seen that brands like this are completely left the other brands behind. There's obviously a bit of a catch-up game happening, but you can see that Tesla just announced that the newest cars that they're pushing out is fully 100% capable of autonomous driving. Obviously, they don't have the software for it, but it's actually capable of doing that. So for people who remember going back at the early days of the portable music era, I used to have a Sony Discman, and from there I remember when I was at school, everyone was getting one of these MP3 players. So we had this company Rio that basically came out with and pretty much dominated the MP3 market by building a ton of features. It was almost like an arms race to build features and more storage and whatnot. That was until Apple came along. Because what Apple did was they did something completely differently. And if you've ever seen the way Apple presents it, they don't actually sell features. What they did was they sold the experience of it. And when I talk about the experience, the first version of iTunes allowed you to do really was allowed you to discover music, allowed you to preview it, and allowed you to download. So they used iTunes as the platform, and obviously they had a very sexy device to go with it that was not just very closely tied in with this experience, but also, was like a bit of a style status. It was, walking around with this cool white headphones was your differentiator. So we keep hearing about, when I was working in the corporate world, we kept hearing about things like the disruptive business model. So, I kept thinking, what does this actually mean? So, and this is something we hear all the time: disruptive business model, innovative companies. But when I actually started researching it, what I found was that today, companies that create to be completely differentiated in the market are doing what's known as staging these experiences. So when I say staging, they're creating like memorable, personable, and relevant experiences. And I'll go through some of the examples of companies that are doing this. But they've moved. What the guys who put this together, Pine and Gilmore, said that we need to move beyond the goods economy and the service economy to be able to stage experiences, to be truly differentiated in the market, and also command a premium price. When I actually started thinking about this, a lot of these companies are right in our smartphones, right in front of us. So you've got like people like companies like Netflix and Spotify, really redefine the way we purchase stuff and the way we consume consume entertainment. So you got Netflix last week announced they've got 86 million subscribers, right? And these guys have completely disrupted the home entertainment industry. And they did something very similar to iTunes, which was like allowed really sophisticated way to discover content and also get personalized content. So not only did they redefine how content was delivered, I mean, you could start watching a movie at home, but then finishing it off like on your way to work on the bus. So it had this beautiful, continuous way to start and end the experience. But not only did they that, but they also started using the data they had to start producing new content. So this was a bit of a game changer for the content production industry. So for example, they knew that content that was produced by David Finch with the actor Kevin Spacey in it and the genre of political dramas, people typically watched it all the way from the beginning to the end. And this was really powerful information because what they did with this was they went on to produce House of Cards, which we know paid off big time because this was a massive hit. So they continue to use this data not only just to change the way they're producing, the way they're pushing content, but also producing new content. The same with Spotify. Like if you look at Spotify, these guys are one up on Apple. So what they've really done is, focused on building long-term relationships by using subscription model rather than a one-off transaction. So they really actually beat Apple to the punch when it comes to the way music was delivered to consumers. And if you look at Airbnb, they were not in the business of selling inventory. What they did was they redefined and create a completely new market to experience your holidays or the accommodation. So even personally for me, I now pretty much just use Airbnb because I love when I go to new places, staying with a host, discovering streets and discovering things that I could never do before. Because when I go back to hotels now, it almost feels like a very sanitized experience. So so these guys have really redefined the way we experience. And Uber, again, we think, these guys displaced the taxi industry or on the warpath to displace the taxi industry. But actually, what they're doing is they're selling us something even more valuable, which is time. So if you look at the investments in autonomous vehicle or Google's investment in autonomous vehicle, really what they're doing is selling us back time and providing us a completely new experience from the way we order the cab to the way we pay, which is completely frictionless. And if you look at Amazon, Amazon obviously started off selling CDs and books, but you quickly see that they've transformed themselves into an experience company. By that, what I mean is what they worked out is they needed to be in your home. The closest connection between the products and you was your home. So I was actually recently in the US and I saw one of these. And these things have been around for a while, but it's the first time I'd actually experienced it. And a friend of mine basically just was washing the dishes, and he realized that, yes, he was washing dishes. Wasn't anyway. So so what he realized was he's run out of dishwasher tablets, and he basically said, "Hey Alexa, add washing tablets to my shopping list," and boom, it was done. And then I noticed that people have this thing called the Amazon Dash, which essentially has moved away from you going and saying, "Oh, I've run out of detergent, so I'm going to add it to my dishwasher or add it to my shopping list." So when I buy it, you essentially just press this button, gets added to your shopping list and delivered the next day. So as we can see that even Amazon is shifting away from just selling your products to redefining experiences by being in your home. Here's some statistics I found that in the last 15 years, 52% of the Fortune 500 companies have disappeared, which is a phenomenal statistic because either they didn't redefine the way consumers experienced it, or they were just disrupted by the new players. So the average life expectancy in 1955 was 75 years on the Fortune 500, but today it's just 15. So that tells us something about the speed of businesses rising and falling. So when I actually looked at some of these business models, I was thinking, like, what do they all have in common? And the common thread is that a lot of them have now shifted to what's known as the subscription economy. So they're no longer building just products and doing one-off transactions, but they're building this long-term relationships using subscription as their business models. And obviously, this has had a dramatic effect in the way we consume stuff, and I'll go through some examples. So, the way we buy software, we don't buy software anymore. We just hire it. So, just some examples like Amazon Web Services or Salesforce. We no longer buy this software. We no longer buy media. We subscribe to media. We no longer buy music, or we no longer buy music. We subscribe to music, and you can see even retailers are moving away from selling you stuff to becoming subscribers. Amazon Prime and Dollar Shave Club being a perfect example. I mean, the shaving blade, for God's sake, right? They recently exited for $1 billion to Unilever, which kind of shows some really interesting things. Tells you really interesting things about how the whole world is moving into this subscription economy, and the whole thing is about the relationship that's changed between the consumer and the business. So you might be thinking, what has all this got to do with CRO? We're here, we're here as CRO experts. What does all that have to do with CRO? And to me, I kind of have a view that today's CRO is almost in its infancy. Obviously, we've at different organizations around the world, we're seeing different maturity, even using our own platform, Competeshark. But really, we're still in its infancy of what we can be. So to me, I really see CRO from being the incremental people of being able to increase conversions or persuading consumers to take action, to actually almost becoming business model architects. I think we've got the right mindset for it. I mean, if you look at CRO, it really takes a very experimental approach, using data to be able to make decisions. So I think in organizations, I think we've got the right mindset to, in fact, not just be the people who increases conversion or take actions, but also to be people who are actually going to be the forefront of redefining our business models in the future. And like I said, the way we buy has changed. So from selling products to one-off transactions to by building this ongoing relationships using subscription models. And it's interesting that even though we think subscription businesses have been around for a while. I mean, Salesforce started over 10 years ago, but what we're seeing is this rapid increase in subscription models. So literally everything we're now doing would tend to be gravitating more towards a subscription model. So, we just have to look at our lives. We subscribe to a lot of things. Even though some of these things have been around, what we're finding is there's still an evolving business model. These companies like Netflix, they haven't learned everything about it yet. They're still experimenting a lot, which I'll show you shortly. So this is an example from Dollar Shave Club. In fact, what we do with Competeshark is we capture ongoing versions of their website, and we also look at what sort of experiments they're running in the behind the scenes. So this is Dollar Shave Club here. It's a video. You can see that they're experimenting with three things. One is the top line messaging, the subheading, and also the offer. In fact, they're trying four things. The fourth one is the button goes from select to try it. These are companies with a lot of traffic. They've had a long history of subscription, but we still see that they're doing lots and lots of testing around call to actions and headline messaging. And as I mentioned before, Unilever acquired them for $1 billion. And the reason why they acquired them is because Unilever knows that there's a massive opportunity in the subscription market. I mean, they obviously, we know that there's a lot of household products they make. But what they actually do, they've always been a distributor of products, but they haven't been in a subscription economy. So they're hoping to learn a lot from Dollar Shave Club on how to actually build subscription models. Netflix, this is a company with like 86 million subscribers, right? So you'd think they know everything about how to acquire customers, but actually they're doing a lot of experiments. They're running a lot of experiments, and one of the experiments here is around price anchoring. So they're trying. This is a couple of months old, but it's still relevant. But what they're trying is trying to anchor the pricing between two pricings, and by having three prices. The other one is one we picked up quite recently, which was the premium plan being moved between the first column and the last column, and only one line of word changing. One is the Ultra HD 4K, and the last one says best for sharing. So what they're trying to discover is the people who buy the premium plans, are they the people with their sexy new 4K TV, or are they buying it because they've got multiple devices at home and which they want to share? So, this is as I said, this is a company with 86 million subscribers, but still their acquisition, they're very active around their acquisition testing. This is one between the US and Australia. So this is the American version of the Choose the Plan That's Right for You, where they've stripped off all the features and just provided a very basic explanation of what each of these pricing plan does. And this is the Australian version. The only difference really has been, well, there's two differences. One is the screens you can watch on, but also this line here saying cancel anytime. Because I think they've, being in Australia, I think we're still trying to get used to what subscription actually means. I mean, typically for us, subscription meant getting an 18-month phone plan, which was really hard to get out of, right? So what they're trying to say is, no, you can buy this and get out of it any time. So they're providing reassurance to new markets, which they don't have to do in the United States because they're pretty much used to it. Presto, two types of experiments we see. One is by listing a whole bunch of options. The other one is taking them straight into the funnel and then showing them the options. And this is quite a common one. We're seeing this quite a lot, where you show them options up front, and that one is where you take them straight into the funnel. Does anyone want to have a guess at which one won? Sorry, A? I hear lots of A's. Actually, B is the winning experience, because if you go on the Presto's website now, that's the default. That's the default production version. So I think that shows you that sometimes giving people too many options up front is probably not a good thing. You take them into the funnel and then prove the value of the product and then provide the options. This is one on the age. We're seeing, again, this was like a couple of months ago, we're seeing an experiment where they're rotating the call to actions on their pricing button, where the select button's on the bottom on one, and at the top on the variant B. And we also see really subtle things around, like being able to move the pricing and the actual description of the plan. So over here, we're seeing the weekly go up in one, and the price being the default selected option on the other one. Freshbooks and accounting software, they've been around for a long time. You see them running lots and lots of experiments. So in this instance, they've got, again, doing experiments around the price anchoring, where Version A had literally 3 prices, but with no description, very, very minimal description of what that plan involves. And option B, where they give you a lot more descriptive, but also what they've done is added a 4th plan. In fact, what happened was this was their winning experience, or this was their the experience they ended up going with, because and a couple of things we notice here. Obviously, having 3 prices instead of 4 works better. It just anchors the price better. And the second thing is that they've removed the 95 cents and just gone for straight rounded up pricing as the default. Clearly, that works better than adding 95 cents for that industry. Allianz, we've seen, anyone here from Allianz? With Allianz, we're seeing there's 2 versions of their car insurance page. One for different segments, one for women and one for men. It's quite random from what we can see, the way it's presented, but or they may be doing some level of sophistication using to determine the sex of the person coming in. But you can see that on on A, women are provided a lot more options to customize, while men just provided 2 bullet points. So I don't know what that says about men's attention span. So beyond all the sort of experiments and stuff we pick up from the platform, the other beauty is also we get to understand some of the market trends. So this is for Australia at the moment. This snapshot was actually taken about 2 months ago, so it's slightly dated. But we can see that Optimizely have about a 25% market share in Australia, followed by Derby Target, then Visual Web Optimizer. The other 56% of the websites may be using a slightly different technology or don't have any tags that are related to testing. When we look at this more on a global scale, Optimizely had 20% of the market share amongst the sites that we obviously monitored. It could be quite different when you actually look at the entire internet. 4% for Visual Web Optimizer and 11% for Derby Target, and the other 65% were untagged. So there's a huge opportunity really in this space for the agencies in the room. In terms of people who are actually who have their websites tagged but not running any experiments, this is where it gets really interesting, because you've got as you can see, there's a lot of websites that have been tagged up with Optimizely, but only less than a quarter of them running any sort of active experiments at the time we actually took the snapshot. VW actually does pretty well, and followed by Derby Target. Sorry, Derby Target, then followed by VWO. So I think this is like a massive opportunity, especially for agencies to encourage more active testing, because obviously people have invested in these technologies, but not everyone's actually running these tests. So a little bit more about what we do and why we started this. So Sean and I used to work at Suncorp Group with Sam over there in the audience. Hey, Sam. We worked in different companies, from utility companies to software companies and insurance. And one thing that we knew was that today marketers have all the tools in the world to analyze their user journeys, user behavior. But one thing that we continually felt, especially being in a very commoditized space, was that market forces were having greater impact on our business. So competitors now with all the digital testing and digital are definitely more active. The length of campaigns are getting, there's a lot more rapid generation of campaigns. Tool sets today make it much easier for marketers to produce content and to execute campaigns where you don't have to rely on IT teams. And the other thing was, today the customers are a lot more smarter. I mean, even the way we bought products was completely different to the way my parents bought products, many years ago. So customers doing more research and have much lower attention spans. I mean, I read somewhere that an average customer only has 8 seconds on your website before, if you don't give them what you need within 8 seconds, they're gone, right? So these were kind of like 2 big market forces, which was competitors being more active and you providing the right digital experience. Even the site speed being less than even every 2-second delay had a big impact on your conversions. And that's the real reasoning behind why we started this company. So like all good startups, we started this in my garage about a year and a half ago after quitting our jobs. And really our mission was to help track and analyze competitor activity in real time. So what we do is we help companies understand who they may be losing their customers to and why. Beyond that, we also beyond that, we also do check things like who's updating the content, what are the trending, what are the types of things they're focused on? Are they making pricing changes or promotional? And we send like real-time alerts on what's changed. And like as I showed some examples, we also can capture around what are your competitors targeting in terms of like the segments of the market? What sort of pricing patterns are we seeing, right? How are they differentiating between the different devices, between mobile, tablets, and desktop? And beyond that, we also provide some metrics around page load and benchmarking. How fast is your page compared to your peers and across the industry? Where do you sit for example, between your nearest peer and New York Times or Huffington Post or one of those kind of companies that have like really optimized for delivery of speed using content delivery networks, etc. So where are you sitting? And the last thing is around governance. So some companies use Competeshark as a way to just record keep, especially regulated industries where you're presenting multiple options to customers and you need to go back and you may not have that information in your CMS because you ran that test through an Optimizely type platform. But what we do is we capture that so you actually have the exact screenshot of what you actually presented to your customer. So it's more from a governance record keeping perspective. So that was just a quick overall of how I see the subscription and the experience economy evolve, and a little bit about what we do. So thank you very much.